I'm Jay Lucas, and I'm here with some very important people to talk about a very important topic. And the topic is China and the threat that communist China poses to our nation and to our freedom. And I'm here with Frank Gaffney, who is the founder of the Center for Security Policy and the leader of this group, a new committee initiative that has been formed, the Committee on the Present Danger, China. Also with Joe Bosco, who is formerly with the Defense Department on the China desk, an expert on China, and with Sean Lin, who grew up in China, who survived the massacre in Tiananmen Square, and is now a very strong advocate for human rights and religious freedoms. And well, let me turn to you, Frank, first, if I may, because you really are really instrumental in putting this effort together. Welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you. It's great to be here, partly because we think that there's an opportunity in the days leading up to the first in the nation primary here for citizens of this state to be asking applicants for the job of commander-in-chief whether they understand the problem set that China poses to us, whether they really are clued up about the mortal threat, in fact, that it represents, existential threat to freedom, as Ronald Reagan used to say, or if they don't. And if they don't, I would argue that's a disqualifier. And as important, if they do understand the magnitude, the diversity, the dynamic nature of the threats we're facing from China, do they have a plan as to what to do about it, how to counter it, how to contend with it, how to diminish it? The second reason we're here is to talk to state legislators and their constituents, of course, about a problem that we've stumbled onto, which is that much of the threat that we're now facing from communist China is actually made possible. It's being underwritten by American investors, institutional investors, individual investors, state public pension funds like that of New Hampshire, as a matter of fact, that are investing in companies tied to some of the most dangerous things that the Chinese are doing, whether it's brutalizing their own people or whether it's threatening ours and others. And so we're here as part of the Committee on the Present Danger to tell this story, to raise awareness. We've shared a national poll of likely voters that we just released here today for the purpose of helping expose both what people don't know about this danger, and when they find out about it, what they would like to do, which is overwhelmingly
overwhelming
with the recommendations of our Committee on the Present Danger China. People can find out about all of this at presentdangerchina.org.
That's really amazing, Frank, and the timing of this is so important too, because really it's sort of late in the game, because China's been at this effort for quite some time. Now, it's great that we're doing it now. But Joe, I mean, you've seen this problem really for a number of years. And, just give us a little perspective on how did we get to where we are today?
Well, it started out with very good intentions. President Richard Nixon knew that China was a problem. Back then, we had been in the Korean War, fighting China. They were subverting governments around the world with wars of national liberation. They were a threat to their own people. Vietnam, they were killing Americans as well. They were a threat to their own people and to their neighbors and to the Western world generally. Nixon said it had to change. We had to find a way to get China to change. He stressed that repeatedly. But he had, as his national security advisor, an assistant on China, Henry Kissinger, who did not have a history of professional involvement in the issue and who had a different agenda from what Nixon's was. Nixon wanted to change China. Kissinger wanted to use China to play against the Soviet Union and to help us get out of Vietnam. Both of those efforts failed, but all the things we gave up to China to achieve that have remained in place ever since. We in effect sold out Taiwan by changing our recognition from Taiwan to China. We took the Seventh Fleet out of the Taiwan Strait. We removed U.S. forces from Taiwan. All of this was to assuage China that we were not hostile, that we wanted to be friends with them, and the assumption has proved faulty. China has never changed in any way. It has continued with its hostile policies toward the West and its persecution of its own people. And we are now faced with a much more powerful and dangerous China than Nixon confronted back 40 years ago.
Well, and it's a threat on so many multiple dimensions, whether it's the economic, whether it's military, artificial intelligence, the espionage that they do here. And it's a grave threat to America. But I think also on another dimension, just as a citizen of the world, being concerned about human rights, what they're doing to their own people is absolutely horrific. But maybe you can just spend a moment on that, if you would, Sean.
Yeah, so in the last 7 decades under the communist rule, there are more than 80 million of Chinese people die unnaturally. So every 5 to 10 years, there are political movements. So Chinese Communist Party is systematically cracking down so many different group of people, intellectuals, farmers, workers.
And there's 80 million people over what period of time?
For the last 70 years.
70 years, 80 million people. I just want to pause on that for a moment, because that is a horrific number.
Horrific number. Even the whole world talk about victim of communism, right? Just about 100 million, but China accounts for 80 million of it. Yeah, so Chinese people continually suffer from the Chinese Communist Party's rule. And in the most recent example in the last 2 decades is persecution. So many religious groups, they totally cranking up from the Falun Gong groups in 1999, and then more persecution on Tibetans. So you see the Tibetan monks, self-immolations, and then for the Uyghur group, we talk about 1 million people being incarcerated, and then there's house churches, so many Christians being persecuted in China. You always heard about news, they demolished the church, and put a priest into torture, all this kind of.
Well, and we were talking earlier about the organ harvesting.
Yeah.
And if you could just spend a minute on that, because I know we've got to wrap here in a moment, but
okay,
it really is important.
Yeah, the organ harvesting is also the darkest crime that's been exposed that the Communist Party has established a nationwide system, an industrial scale of killing innocent Chinese people and then taking their organs to make profits. And so now you can see the Chinese transplant centers advertising the foreigners go to China for transplant. 2 weeks, you get kidney. In 1 month, 2 months, you can get a liver transplant.
And this is because they have 1 million people incarcerated where they've taken biometric information from them, blood samples, tissue samples. They'll know where the matches are. And then what do? They go out and how do they get these organs?
So usually the hospital, whether military or civilian hospital, work with the judicial system, work with the police, and then they go to detention center, prison, labor camp, kill that person who had the match.
So kill the person who has the match.
Yeah, had the match. And then
You're essentially ordering the specific organ of the specific blood type and so on to meet your needs, and then they go cull their inventory for that particular organ, and in the process often will kill.
Yeah, it's a live organ bank. You can withdraw that anytime you have a need.
Right.
It's absolutely terrible. Absolutely
Evidence
terrible.
of the horrific character of this regime and its willingness to do to its own people such horrible things is a warning to us.
Of what they would do to us.
Yeah, that's why they don't care about shipping so much fentanyls to the United States. The killing people is kind of routine to them.
Well, it's such an important cause, and it's such an important message. I'm delighted that you are here today in New Hampshire, and I'm also honored to be part of the team to help spreading that message. So,
Thank you for your leadership.
gentlemen, thank you very much. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Joe, Sean,
Thank you.
thanks.